Jacob here from Ripe House Advisory, and today we have a question from Alexander. Now that question is, what are my thoughts on the upcoming property crash? As if it's a given, as if it's something that's definitely going to happen. Okay, so this doom and gloom sentiment, let's unpack it. And obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have one sitting down here. This is just my opinion. Okay, and I obviously am a keen observer of the property market and macro pressures, but it still is just my opinion. So take it with a grain of salt. So obviously, 2021 we have seen extreme and very strong growth. It's going right back into sort of some of the first years, 2004, 2005. When I purchased investment properties, since we have seen, or I personally have seen, this type of growth on my portfolio or property portfolio. So, obviously outstanding growth in many parts of the country. What's been driving it? And I'm going to investigate what's been driving this market to determine if that changes, will there be a crash? Okay, so interest rates, obviously at record all-time lows. No sign of them changing. A lot of confidence. We've weathered the storm with COVID. People are out and about. We've got deposits saved. We haven't been traveling overseas. Generally, we've got a FOMO. Property prices growing, people wanting to buy, they don't want to miss out. Okay, so we've got confidence. We've got record low interest rates, so money is cheap. It's cheaper to buy than to rent in many locations. Okay, and that balance is shifting to the buy side, or has already shifted. So the implication is that growth is likely to correct or potentially stop this upwards trajectory when interest rates increase. So the flip side, whilst they are still low, growth will continue, is the assumption. And so when you talk to the RBA, or when you listen to the RBA as the source, the primary source for commentary around interest rate changes in Australia, and obviously they dictate the terms, they have said themselves in very clear and consistent language that 2024 is going to be the projected time that they can start increasing interest rates again. And there's a lot that goes into that in terms of increasing it. And they've been very consistent, and their track record, at least in recent times, has been very good in doing what they say they are going to do. So let's just take 2024 as the time when the RBA are projecting themselves that interest rates are going to increase. And the growth that's been occurring is a direct result of interest rates being at this point. So the argument would even be that property prices will continue to have upwards pressure right throughout the next 3 years, 2.5 years. Westpac themselves are also bullish. So they are seeing that the market conditions as they are now are set to continue throughout 2022, for a whole another 12 months. So they're really not seeing the upwards price pressure changing. Now, perhaps, and this is, somewhat in the future, 2024, when interest rates potentially are going to be increasing, perhaps when that occurs and interest rates do inevitably or, eventually increase, there will be, a consolidation in the market. Generally, the property market at a national level does weather storms, through correction periods with stability. You have fluctuations in localized markets, Sydney having a correction, but as a country, you've got markets that are still holding up relatively well through down periods, and you've got markets that are very volatile and impacted. So we've got upwards pressure on property prices for this 3-year period between now and 2024. Now, I'm not going to speculate about what potentially could be made in that time, but for me, knowing that the conditions that we're in, knowing property prices are safe haven that it is, knowing the government sentiment to stimulate the economy through property and their demonstrated ability to do that over time and demonstrated willingness to do so, there's nothing to say that in key, strong investable markets across the country, not all, but in key markets, we are still in this strong upwards trajectory. And there's no signs really, in some cases, that that's likely to change. So for me, I don't want to forgo the potential for growth over the next 3 years with the risk, or the potential for a correction at that point. That's just me personally. Now, there's a couple of other points. So remember, property price, profiting through property is not just through capital growth of the asset. That is only, for me, the icing on the cake. That is only, the fourth way that we make money. We've got to make money when we buy. I want to be the person that profits when I buy, not the vendor. Okay, so we've got the potential when we buy a property as an investment to make 1, 2, 3%, even more in some cases when you buy. Obviously, in an upwards trajectory market, it's exponentially harder to potentially buy at or below market, but it's still possible when you look at the whole country. So that is a way that you buy this property now and you're profiting and you're creating a buffer in that property to weather a storm. You're also able to make money in a property through cosmetic renovations, not major structural, constructions here, short in and out. Kitchen, 15 grand full kitchen reno, maybe adding $30,000 in value. That's profit. That adds a layer of a buffer in that property. I want to be the one profiting through a renovation, not the vendor, not buying a finished product. I definitely want to be the one that's renovating a property in this environment and profiting. You don't get the opportunity when you're buying shares, as an example, to have a discount at market. It is what the ticker price is. Property, you're able to negotiate. You're able to leverage relationships and experience and knowledge to potentially buy it below market. You're not able to value add with shares. You're able to value add with property and create that buffer. Third way we make money is through surplus positive cash flow. I want a property, especially in this environment where things are moving, where there's volatility. We want to have money being put into our pocket each week. And more particularly, we want to have stability with that rental market that we're buying in, a low vacancy rate, a lot of diversified employment, an affordable price point. So even if the worst case scenario happened, there is more emphasis back onto the rental side in that market, and we have a floor that is set under the rental price that we're achieving in that property. And therefore, the property is paying us to weather the storm. Okay, that's really important. And then when you look at it that way, the growth that is the growth on that property is the icing on the cake. And I'm not saying it is not going to occur. I'm saying let's look at the bigger picture. We also don't have to buy the national property index. We cannot. Okay, we buy an individual property in an individual street, in an individual suburb, in an individual local government area or city, in an individual state. The story is very different with that context. We can control variables. We can move into a market that has a diversified, growing economy with lots of population pressure, and we're smart about it. So even if the worst case was to occur, we have a floor in that market. We're able to choose our entry points, choose those areas to our success, and potentially amplify an upslide and provide a floor on any downside. So we're not buying into a volatile or a national correction. We are picking our market successfully. So when I take that approach, it's about grabbing the bull by the horns, making money when we buy, making money in that first year particularly. For me personally, I wouldn't even consider an investment if I didn't feel I could get a 65% recoup of my capital in the first year as profit in that property. You can refinance, you can keep it there as a buffer. That's my minimum requirement. We've got our profit in that property after that first year. Anything on from there, it's a bonus. A correction, we've got a buffer. I think that's the important way that I look at this situation and this type of discussion. Hopefully that's useful for you. Thank you.